Welcome in, everyone. This is Dan French, host of Wealthytainment. We have a great one to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about Robert Kiyosaki and coming out and endorsing Donald Trump and how he has called Donald Trump a financial genius. Yes, a financial guru, somebody that is very good with money, very good with investments and financing. Now, I'm going to come out and say I disagree with Robert. Robert Kiyosaki, if you guys don't know who he is, he's a gentleman that wrote a book about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. When I read the book, what I got from it was, don't work for somebody else. Don't go to school, for a specific craft or a specific job title because you'll be working for somebody else and you won't gain financial freedom. And he's an entrepreneur, investor, and he's been around for a while. People know who he is. He's kind of an economist out there. He has his own podcast. So Robert Kiyosaki is somebody that is somewhat legit. I think he has a lot of good, valid points. And that book was very interesting to me. I remember reading it. It did have some impact on me. I also know that, when you look at Donald Trump, when you have that name come out, people think, that's synonymous for wealth, power, success. There's a lot of things when you hear the name Donald Trump that comes out. People think, elegant. They think that, investor, entrepreneur, a lot of money, right? Wealthy. And that's kind of what most people think when they heard Donald Trump before he was president. So they've been friends. They've been boys for a long time. Robert Kiyosaki came out and had an interview with Fox News. And I want to play that clip on what he had to say about his interview. It's not the interview from Fox, but he had to say about it. I'm also going to sprinkle in with some Joe Rogan comments on who he thinks he's going to go for president. And it's very interesting because I feel the same way. I've put out a lot of videos recently about that. And this is a channel that's not political, but there's been a lot of news and information out on social media, on a lot of comments, a lot of people involved on trying to have their either take or their comments on what's going on with this presidential race between Kamala Harris and President or former President Donald Trump. And there's been a lot of goofy stuff going on, right? A lot of stuff that's going on with social media that is calling Kamala out, calling Trump out in some ways. And, you go back 20 years, all of these things that presidents and former presidents and political people and just things out there in the news, because of social media and because of iPhones and all the technology we have, we are seeing stuff years before and really calling these people out. Kamala Harris came out and said that, or at least, President Trump stated that she was Indian, found information on that. There's been stuff where, there's been presidents and former presidents stating that, they're going to raise taxes and then lower them. And just, it's all that smoke and mirrors, and I think a lot of people have the ability to call this out, and they're really paying attention to a lot of this stuff that's being said by these political powers or these political people out there. I've always been an advocate for saying we need more than just two. We can't just have Republican and Democratic because that's where all the money's at. That's where all the money's being pushed, right? We got to have more than that. I mean, 5, 6 people, I don't know, whatever that number is, but I'm a person that pushes the best person for the job. And so, again, this is not a political show. We're going to hear what Joe Rogan had to say about that. First, let's listen to what Joe Rogan had to say, and then we'll talk more about it.
That's just what they do. That's politics. They do it on the left. They do it on the right. They gaslight you. They manipulate you. They promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas, but he's much more reasonable and intelligent. I mean, the guy was an environmental attorney and cleaned up the East River. I mean, he's a legitimate guy.
So you hear what Joe Rogan had to say, and again, I don't know if he's the right person for the job. I think he's the only other person, right? The only other person out there that had any money, because that's really what it comes down to. It's a popularity vote. We talked about this before, but who else has the money and he has a little bit. Like, it's not like he's getting a lot of money pushed towards his campaign. He's just the third person, the odd person out, really. And it's sad because there should be more opportunity for others out there that's not related to money. And if you really go to a job interview, it's the best person for the job. And so, again, I think there should be more than just these two. And it's sad that everybody buys in and has comments, and it's like, oh, well, it looks like it's just down to these two people. Why is nobody out there voicing that we should have more? 5, 6, 7 people out there that could run for presidency. Why is that? I'm not sure what this is, but it's almost like people are just so inundated with what the actual information is, the news, the jokes, the soap opera they call this presidential election. It's distractions left and right. So I would have to agree with Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan's onto something. I don't know if it's just because he believes in that presidential candidate, but I do think that it's somebody else. It has to be something else or somebody else that really has better solutions to problems. It can't just be the same things. Again, when you look at President Trump, he had success. He had success economically. He was not somebody that got along with everybody. I mean, there was people that didn't like what he said. Maybe the intentions were there to be good. I don't know. But, what his thing was tax cuts. What other president? Every president says we're cutting taxes on something every time. Deregulation, right, on certain industries. When he talked about tax cuts, though, he only got tax cuts for corporations. So when you look at these big corporations getting a tax cut, it didn't really help us average Americans out there, middle class people that are still getting taxed. He did have stock market growth. Who did that affect? Oh, that affected mostly corporations, right? There's not a lot of people out there with today that have a lot of money in the stock market. Trade policies, small business incentives. I mean, he has some ideas, some solutions, but again, he's dealing, and maybe he's a financial guru of the game we call debt-based society. That's the game. The game is how much, can you manipulate the debt to make yourself wealthy? I think he's really good at that. I think he's obviously A+ at that. But when you look at it from a standpoint of what Joe Rogan had to say, I agree with Joe Rogan. And with him working for Dana White, being the UFC president, good for him, man. He's got his own money. He don't need to appease anybody. When Donald Trump comes in and they're all clapping and everything at the UFC fights, good for him. Again, I'm not a anti-Trump or Kamala. I don't care. The reality is that people put way too much emphasis on this stuff, but it is interesting to see the mindset of how people operate and really how this broken system we have in debt and our economy is really something that people don't pay attention to. Let's listen to Robert Kiyosaki had to say about Trump, and I'm going to come back and give you my opinion, then we'll wrap this up.
I'm Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My recent interview with Fox Business was no exception. With the 2024 election season heating up, I'm giving you my take on former President Donald Trump and the current administration. I talked a lot about Bitcoin on my interview with Fox News. I didn't mince words. The reason I'm happy that Donald's speaking at the Bitcoin conference is because, as you know, he's a genius with money, and Biden and Kamala are idiots with money. Nobody has done more damage to the economy than Biden and Kamala. Trump had many challenges he faced during his presidency, including the significant increase in national debt and his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. I agree with Trump's support for high tariffs on imported goods, a policy criticized for potentially driving up consumer prices. The real problem is the national debt, and they can't solve it. While some investors might look to traditional assets like silver or gold for protection, and I say buy Bitcoin if you want to fix the world, fix our money. I have been friends for decades with Trump. We wrote a book together in 2006 titled, Why We Want You to Be Rich, 2 Men, 1 Message. In it, we predicted that the American middle class would keep shrinking, eventually pushing many into poverty. I am an advocate using unconventional financial strategies, including leveraging debt to build wealth, a strategy I use to accumulate assets. Trump is a money genius, even though he has accumulated $1.2 billion in debt.
See, and you could see it right there. Robert, he's even come out and stated that debt is really the problem, right? We're trillions of dollars in debt, and it's growing. And when you look at our situation as a system, what Trump has done is use the system. Now, let's be honest, too. He's inherited a lot of this wealth from his dad. It wasn't just he's making all these, pulling all the right buttons and or pushing all the right buttons and pulling all the right strings and making sure that everything is good and you know, not having any failures. He's had a lot of failures. He's not like some genius out there, but what he does know is because of his father, because he's been in the industry or the game of debt and how investments work and how governments work, he's been able to be somewhat good on the economic situation that we saw when he was in presidency. Now, presidents don't make all the decisions, and when they come out and state these things, make these comments like, you know, we're going to do tax cuts and we're going to do this and we're going to stop our spending and stop this and stop that. The reality of spending is that Congress is the one that is the final decision maker or the big decision maker on where the money goes, right? It's got to be a collaboration of where does this money go to, right? When you look at Ukraine and you look at all of our money that has been sent for homelessness in California, and this is just a few examples. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Our debt has increased to crazy limits, numbers that we've never seen before, and it's going to continue to go that direction. The system is broken. So when you look at this and think that, well, he's a guru, $1.2 billion in debt is not a guru. You're just good at the game. You're good at, it's like playing chess. You're just good at playing chess. This is a system of game. You know, when you look at how this is all being created, the infrastructure, we're dependent on debt. Government spending, you know, is relied primarily on borrowing and financing its operations, right? This includes funding defense, social programs, Social Security, Medicare. You know, when you look at the infrastructure, right? This thing is monetary policy. It's going out and putting out dollars in circulation, buying and selling government securities. And so when you see how the government actually works as a whole, when you see the fact that our system has been broken, how can any president really come in and say that this is going to get fixed? How can any politician say that when the economic situation that we have, going back to Robert Kiyosaki and what he had to say, which again, I'm not saying that there's not been success, but when you look at us as an economy, what Americans should be focusing on is how many IOUs are going out, right? When you think about IOUs, I think about talking about Dumb and Dumber. If you guys ever remember, I'm going to show you a quick clip of this Dumb and Dumber because it's like the funniest part of the video. So let me show you this real quick and come back and I'll finish and wrap this up.
What is this? What is this? Where's all the money?
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs. Go ahead and add it up. Every cent's accounted for. Look. See this? That's a car. $275,000. Might want to hang on to that one.
Man, that tells you right there what it's all about. You know, our U.S. economy is heavily driven by consumer spending and fueled by credit. You know, people live in paycheck to paycheck. And when people think that lowering taxes and making slight little, you know, changes here and there is going to change the financial outcome or outlook, the landscape of our economy is not true. You know, as you could see, if inflation keeps going up, which it has, and people don't see a change, and yet if you look at businesses, you know, raising their hourly wage, right? That's what some of the political parties pushed for. But if you're so far out because you're trying to keep up with inflation and you want to say, well, people are complaining that they can't pay their bills, yet you have other businesses that say, well, if you're going to do that, I'm just going to close my business. I'm not going to do this business anymore. You know, recently there was a McDonald's that, you know, they raised in California, raised their minimum wage up. And one of the companies out there that was being ran for 30 plus years closed their doors. It's not just McDonald's, it's many companies. They can't afford in a increase of wages that quick, that soon, to accommodate the inflation of what our debt-based society has been produced. And when you look at financial guru like Robert Kiyosaki, I'm going to say, you know what, man, based off of what game you're playing, yeah, he's an A plus. Like he's a really good player. So is Robert. But that doesn't mean that things couldn't fail. And when Robert says go to gold and silver or buy Bitcoin, that's been influenced. You know, so again, I'm not saying that gold and silver is not a somewhat of a safer haven, but at the end of the day, all I'm trying to tell you is that we have a broken system. It doesn't matter what president gets in. It doesn't matter how great a genius that President Trump is. It's a temporary band-aid on a problem. It's kicking the can down the road. And until this thing is either fixed, which I don't think it will be, or we just start over, this is always going to be a problem. And it's always going to be the same things over and over again. Smoke and mirrors in the political parties to try to get votes. I'm Dan French, Wealthy-tainment. You guys have any questions, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys at the next one because I'm out of here.